Today, I'd like to talk about how to cope with life when all seems chaotic and hopeless. And it turns out there's a story in the Gospels that deals with precisely this theme. In fact, there are several stories in the Gospels and in the Bible, broadly speaking, but the one that I'd like to focus on today is found in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. And it reads, "On that day, when evening had come, he being Jesus, said to them, 'Let us go across to the other side.' And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, 'Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?' And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, 'Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" There are several relatable themes that leap out at me from this short story. In fact, really just two that hit me at first. And the first is this universal need for rest. Jesus takes a nap. After a long day or several long days of travel and hard labor for the realm of God, he takes a nap because he was tired. And this is not only very understandable, but highly relatable to us all. Who hasn't found themselves exhausted after a hard couple of days? And it is no fun being tired. And there are some who seem to weather it better than others, but I'm just about average when it comes to my ability to cope with exhaustion. And when I'm tired, I find myself irritable. I find that I'm more prone to snap at my children or my wife or my friends. I'm wondering if you, along with me, have ever found yourself midway through a confrontation with someone that you love late at night, one that isn't going especially well, when some still small voice called wisdom speaks in the back of your mind, suggesting that the best thing for you to do in that moment is to just go to sleep. You will feel better after some rest. Now, I just returned from a vacation, and that old cliche rings true for me this week. Sometimes you need a vacation from your vacation. Many of us are just so tired, and if you're not, good for you. I, on the other hand, join the rest of you who are tired. And our being tired can strain our relationships in all sorts of ways. And so Jesus, being our model and who we should try to emulate, he shows us the importance of rest in this story. He curls up at the stern of the boat and goes to sleep, which is usually very sensible to get some sleep when you're tired, but in this case, not very responsible. For the stern of the boat is the place where you steer. So in a sense, you could say that Jesus falls asleep at the wheel. So like I said, not very responsible. And my own perceived need to be responsible is often my excuse for failing to care for myself as I ought. When someone suggests that I practice some basic self-care, I spout off to them, or at least say something in the back of my mind, something like, "I can't take time to exercise because I've got X, Y, or Z before dinner." Or if it's rest I need, I think I can't go to bed or take a nap now, for if I did, I'd never have time for fill in the blank. And I'm sure you have your own things. However, Jesus fell asleep, and at the stern of the boat where you steer. And because it's Jesus, I suppose that we might assume that he did so on purpose, or maybe not. But either way, he doesn't seem too defensive when he is woken up. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. There is this theme of rest, but let's not forget that this rest occurs in the midst of a storm. And that's what I want to spend the rest of our time talking about, the storm, and how to find calm and peace in it. The text reads that a great windstorm arose, a great one, and the waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. But he, Jesus, was in the stern asleep on the cushion. So can you imagine being able to sleep in the midst of such a storm as described here? And also understand that in Jewish thought and in the Hebrew Bible, the sea was a metaphor for chaos. for everything that could go wrong and will go wrong in the world. The sea represented that. And the Israelites were never a seafaring people. Though their land did border the Mediterranean Sea, they were never known for building reliable boats and venturing out onto the ocean for reasons for trade, commerce, or war-making. Instead, the sea functioned as a great uncertain terror that wove in and out of Israel's myth-making and storytelling. The sea was a scary place, a place where monsters lived. One of the things the Hebrew people hoped for was that their God would tame the sea. In other words, bring the chaos to a close and restore some order and some semblance of peace. Take the 47th Psalm as an example of this, which reads verses 12 through 15. Yet God, my King, is from old, working salvation in the earth. You divided the sea by your might. You broke the heads of the dragons in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. You gave him as food for the creatures of the wilderness. You cut openings for springs and torrents. You dried up ever-flowing streams. Here is expressed a hope that God would even tame the sea serpent, the Leviathan, and the sea. For the sea and its monsters seem to contrast with the order and stability God has spoken into existence at the beginning. And in this psalm, Psalm 74, the sea is even drained dry. Peace, calm, order brought back into the life of the people. And do you know what? I think that a storm at sea is an apt metaphor for just about all of us. Does not life feel that way sometimes? When you are tossed about at sea, you don't know which way is up. You don't know how long you can endure it, or if you're swimming, whether your arms will have the strength to keep you afloat. And maybe your strength will give way and you'll drown. Or maybe if you're fortunate enough to have a boat or a lifeline or something, some barrier between the sea and your person, some security, maybe then you'll feel a bit better. But there's always uncertainty as to how much of a beating the boat can take. As I mentioned earlier, we just returned from vacation, and we went to Florida and spent some time at the beach, which was nice. And we brought with us our children, including our precocious 3-year-old who loves to run away, which is what he did at the beach, which was crowded. And then there's the water. And in that direction, in the direction of the water, the wind, the waves, need I spell it out? Lies disaster. And as the minutes ticked by, and as we continued to not find him, as the panic swelled in our chests, I kept saying to myself, you have killed your son. You have killed your son. For you see, I was responsible for watching him. He bolted on my shift, and I looked down for a minute, and there he went. And I know it's dark thinking. Dark thinking, you killed your son. But it's where your head is at when you are 10 minutes into a search and rescue for your 3-year-old by the ocean, and the wind and the waves. And then there's Jesus asleep in the boat. And the disciples are perplexed. In those moments, there is no peace, there is no calm, but Jesus is sleeping. So they wake him and they speak very sensible, though fear-drenched words at him. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And who can blame them? The looks on their faces must have held their incredulity. How could Jesus be asleep? How could he be so calm? I've seen that same look of incredulity on the face of my daughter when she came to me one time in her own calamity, saying, Dad, I can't find Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is our dog, narcissistically named perhaps, our dog. And she said, Dad, I can't find him. And she was almost in tears, in fact, in tears, and confused as to why I didn't share her panic. And my calm seemed to frustrate her, in fact. I wasn't taking it seriously, and she thought that I should feel about her chaos as she then did. But I didn't, because I had learned through experience that our dog was almost certainly in another room, or perhaps in the fenced-in yard out back. Because you see, I am abreast of information that she does not have, lived experiences that she has not lived through yet. I've been there before. And what Jesus knows in the storm is that storms are serious. True enough. But there are worse things that could happen. And even if the worst happens, as did happen to Jesus on a cross, Jesus knows there is a power in God that will sustain him through it all. So Jesus is calm and finds rest amidst the chaos. In fact, he speaks calm into the chaos. He shares his calm with those around him. And while we ran up and down the beach, the presence of God for us was experienced by way of wonderful people who joined in the search. They said things like, it's okay, we'll find him, this happened to me before, we've been there, we'll find him, we always find them. And they were there, speaking calm into our storm. And the lifeguards and the beach security persons said things like, hey, this happens 5 or 6 times a day. They said it so nonchalantly, 5 or 6 times a day on this beach. We've always found them. It's okay. It'll be okay. We've got this. As if to say to our waves and the tumultuous energy in our spirits, peace, be still. And for moments, it helped. One woman, one saint, grabbed my wife and said simply, you are a good mom. Don't think anything else. This happens to the best parents. You are a good mom. And there were 2 children, a brother and sister whose names I regrettably forget. They ran circles around me, asking anyone who'd listen if they'd seen my son. They were the presence of Christ to me in my storm. Speaking calm. Well, 20 minutes or so of this, and then the blessed news came. Kelly, my wife, called me to let me know that he was found at lifeguard station number 3, and I sprinted there and found him a half mile from where he began his journey. He sat upon a 4-wheeler, which he thought was great, with a lifeguard as happy and content as a 3-year-old can be. I really do think that he had a wonderful time. I grabbed him and held him close, and the sea was at last made calm. The waves finally ceased in total. And that day I learned something that I have learned before and will need to learn again. I learned that the calm and the kindness of strangers that they brought into my crisis, into my storm, comes from a lived experience of the world and a wisdom that perhaps I will one day possess more fully. They said in their own way and in their own words and by their presence, peace, be still. Then the wind ceased and there was a dead calm. At least in pockets there was a calm. Somehow they brought the calm with them, which was a gift from God. And I think that Jesus brought the calm with him. All this to say, when storms assail us, and they will, I wonder if the real problem is not the outward chaos, but the inward tension we carry with us in our chests, our own lack of faith that all will be well by God's grace. The storms may be all too real, but when we are twisted up inside with anxieties and fear, when we have not yet learned that there is a strength in God that sees us through the storm, we are overwhelmed. We were falling apart that day on the beach, and in those moments, we felt that the pain and the fear would never end, but it does, and it did. The storm is calmed by a great mystery. Even if the burden is not lifted, there can be peace and calm in that place. Now, no one chided us on the beach for our lack of faith, as Jesus chided the disciples. But Jesus apparently thought that the disciples could have carried a greater calm in that moment, and so he did not give them quite the pass that those around us gave us that day. He spoke into their lives, those lives that were panicked. Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? And I'll just let those words settle on you for a moment. Into your own storm, why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? Spoken from one who is often afraid and often has little faith. So no one said that to us, not at least in a direct or forward way, but I think that the response of the disciples to Jesus' mastery over the storm described us completely after the fact, after our storm. After it all played out, the text reads, and they were filled with great awe and said to one another, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Verse 41. And in the days that followed, I would reflect on those moments by the beach again and again. And again, I have been filled with awe and gratitude for those who helped us through that day. Who were those strangers that even the wind and the sea obeyed them? They brought the calm with them into our situation. And it's just that. You bring the calm with you. It lives deep inside your chest. But it is a true gift from God, and it's not who I am now, at least not in the worst of storms. Maybe someday I will carry the calm with me more fully. And some of you are facing your own storms, terrible storms, with wind and waves, lost loved ones, personal tragedies, bad news from the doctor, pain in your children's lives and those that you love. Know this: there is a God who is even now holding it all, an anchor, a foundation, a reason to hope. Here is my prayer: that each of us in our own time discover that wisdom, that in the storm we must place our trust in God. And when that one says, "Peace, be still," even the wind and the sea obey, and the calm finds us, the profound gift that is the peace of God. And we find that we are, after all, safe in God's hands.